Good morning. Um, it is a beautiful Wednesday morning. It's Holy Week. Um, so Palm Sunday was just this past Sunday, and we're getting ready for Easter Sunday coming up. Um, Pretty excited about today's lesson. Uh, it's beautiful, here at Rose Bowl. It just rained last night, so it's got that nice post-rain smell, and it's not even that cold, so I'm very excited for the run. I didn't connect until I got right here how loud the area was. They're like digging up a tree back there, or who knows what. Unfortunately, Rose Bowl has all but 2 tables, so it's an imperfect situation, but much like our walks with God, that's just how it goes sometimes. Our conditions won't always be perfect. Verse of the day, it gives us Hebrews 12:2. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. I think I did a little bit of research in regards to what this message might have meant on my Bible app. It basically is just referring to, we're all on this race towards heaven, and we need to always just fixate our eyes on God, which is the finish line. If we focus on other things, for example, they mentioned like other competitors in the race, it just distracts us, ultimately. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You want to always fixate your attention on God, fall back on God always in everything that we do. And I think this verse ties in very well to the lesson that I have today, in which I'm very excited. But before that, prayer requests. Again, as last week, I asked that you guys pray for my dad and my brother. Both are still sick. My dad is getting a little bit worse, but I don't know. I had this worry or this concern that, like many times before in the past, I would get led to, my old bad habits, in terms of numbing like certain anger or anxieties. I was kind of worried that would happen, and the exact opposite has been happening with this. I've been much more grounded and not really worried. Obviously there's genuine concern over like the health of my family. However, I really just feel like God has our back, so I haven't really been stressing out too much. I've been really putting forth all my efforts and prayers towards helping my parents, so that they don't worry so much. And yeah, it's pretty much it. I also had a nice little idea of doing a prayer request box. So I got a little box at Target, some little index cards, and I think on Sundays when I come here, instead of doing a lesson, maybe like 30 minutes is kind of a big ask for me, but I want to say 30 minutes prior to my run, I want to go around the park and just take up people's prayer requests. I think a lot of people, when you go up to them and you're like, oh, can I pray for you, or can I talk to you a little bit about God, you give them a lot of power, a lot of room to just be like, no thank you. But I feel like when it's like, a prayer request is a little bit different, because everybody has problems, right? Everyone has something on their mind at home or with themselves, or maybe at work, something that, might bother them, and they're like, okay, you know what, like, why not? That's just my thinking. I'm pretty excited to try it out. So I'm pretty excited to share that, and let you guys know how that goes next Sunday or next Wednesday when I do a little lesson. Aside from family, things have been good. Things have been, well, I mean, things are what they are. Um, just try to pray. I've been struggling, been letting things fly off the handle a lot. I definitely have been cussing a lot more, which I'm not proud of, but it just instinctively comes out of nowhere. When I tell you, I have been letting it fly off the handle sometimes. I don't know why, but again, that kind of ties into a little bit of the message that I'll be reading today. So I mentioned that we're in Holy Week, and I want to just give a little layout of what Holy Week is. So Palm Sunday, which was just this past Sunday, and that's when Jesus arrives in Jerusalem, and everybody is like embracing his entrance, and they're all putting the palm leaves at the feet of the donkey that he's riding on. What the, I almost let it fly off the handle just now. Things like that. Yeah, it's the return of Jesus to Jerusalem. I'm sorry, that really threw me off. Holy Monday, from what I learned, is that's the day that he went to the temple, and he was, outraged at how, people were taking, or just making terrible use of the temple. They were selling stuff, and that's when Jesus was overturning the tables and all that stuff. And then there's Holy Tuesday. Holy Tuesday is when he rebukes the Jewish leaders, which, if no one knows about, I highly recommend that you read up on that. It is a very powerful read. Honestly, it is low-key really, really cool how Jesus talks to these Jewish leaders. I recommend you read that. Holy Wednesday, Judas agrees to betray Jesus. Holy Thursday is the Last Supper. Good Friday, Jesus gets crucified. Saturday, Holy Saturday, is Jesus' day of rest, and Easter Sunday is the resurrection. Just a little brief layout. Pretty much all I wanted to talk about. Now, during this week, the main focus is on the resurrection of Jesus. That's a big thing. That's a huge thing. Today, I wanted to talk about the resurrection of Peter. Now, for those that don't know, during, when Jesus was arrested, Peter had the same crime as Judas. Peter essentially betrayed Jesus. Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. There's the first time where, he's by this fire, and a girl goes, oh, aren't you aren't you that follower of his? And he's like, no, I don't know him. And again, it happens, some guy's like, yeah, you're that Galilean, right? And he's like, I'm telling you, I do not know him. And then the third time, he again denies him, and as he does, he hears the rooster crow. And you could learn about this whole little ordeal in Luke 22, verses 54 to 62. Yeah. It's kind of a little bit of a long verse, but nah, I don't think I'll read it. It's a little bit too much. Basically, they had the same crime, Peter and Jesus, but the difference is Judas, wait, what did I say? Judas and Peter had the same crime. And the difference is that Judas, ultimately he hung himself. He didn't go back to Christ. What Peter did was a little bit different, or a lot different. He ran to Christ now. Now, obviously, I'm sure we've all done wrong to someone, and we've quote unquote ended on bad terms with someone. And I imagine, when that happens, you kind of want to just instinctively avoid that person, right? Well, that's not what Peter did. I believe a little bit after Jesus's resurrection, Peter was on a boat with some disciples, and they were trying to fish, and they couldn't catch anything. So when they see this man on shore, the man tells them to cast their net over onto the right side, and they haul in this big load of fish. And one of the disciples goes, "It is the Lord." And Peter jumps out of the boat, and he starts swimming to Jesus. And that's kind of what we need to do. Peter for sure knew that what he did was wrong, and I'm sure he, had it in the back of his mind, like, man, like, when are we gonna address this elephant in the room, sort of thing, And that never happened, And I think that's because Jesus's love is just so far beyond our own comprehension. Us as people, like, we have this instinct or this need to just kind of hide from shame, to avoid the uncomfortable, that's natural. But God is the unnatural, and that's why he's so great. That's why we follow him and love him, because a lot of what it is he does and what he stands for is just far beyond our comprehension. Like, even though I have been, I myself have been sinning a lot lately, I'll get these little whispers of, like, what, maybe, maybe I'm not worthy or called to do these lessons and stuff like that, and that couldn't be further from the truth. We need to keep coming back to God, to the Word. That's just how it is. Jesus. Basically, it's not over until he returns, right? And it's like the verse of the day. We need to fixate ourselves, our focus to God. Always. We need to, and it's not to say that Jesus likes when we sin. He doesn't, but we need to keep trying. We need to keep going back to him. We need to really delve into the root of our problem. I think the thing with Peter is that he was very prideful. He was what you would consider a super Christian. He wanted to do things of his own accord. He wanted to have, like, his own power, essentially, in a way, from what I understand. And it can't be like that, and that's why he fell. That's why he denied Jesus, because he never had the backing, or he didn't have the backing, but his focus just wasn't entirely on God. I mean, don't get me wrong, Peter was the most radical of the disciples. Everybody knows Peter. He was the first and only one to step out of the boat during the storm and walk on water with Jesus. He's the only one that fought the guards when they went to arrest him. He was doing all these crazy things for God until all the chips were down, until Jesus really needed him, and then he denied him, but even then he still found redemption, and the same goes for us. It gives us, there's some passages I want to read, and it's in Romans 5:8. So I got 3. Romans 5:8. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Romans 8:1 now. Therefore there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Because through Christ Jesus, the law of the Spirit who gives life has set you free from the law of sin and death. And then James 2:13. I'm not going to bother looking for that because that's like 2 pages long. Basically, it's just saying mercy triumphs over judgment. You know, we have time. We need to really comprehend like how lucky we are, you know, to still be on this earth, to still have a new day, you know, to fall to Christ, you know, to come back to him, you know. I think, you know, definitely try and be honest with yourself, you know. You know, try to understand the root causes, you know. Pray if you don't know the root causes of like what it is that's keeping you from fully surrendering to God and trusting in God. All right, this next, man, honestly, I don't know. I've been low-key like, kind of out of it, you know. I don't know if I'm tired or something, but like, you know, it's instances like this where I don't feel like I've really been doing a great job with these videos, you know. And I don't know if there's any underlying feelings or, you know, emotions or anything that has been kind of just like getting in my head, but it's in these moments that I still want to try, you know. Like, I still try to take notes, and, you know, I don't know, sometimes I feel like I want to see what the test is, you know, like what is the purpose of this, you know. It's not that I'm not praying or that I'm not going to church or that I'm not trying. Sometimes it's just going to be like this, you know. Sometimes you're going to have conditions where everybody and their mother is just out making noise, like the loudest freaking truck right now. Like, it's just, you know, instances like this where like you got to really keep going, you know. I have been doing this for like months. No one is here yet, you know. Granted, I understand I picked the two hardest things in this world, Christianity and running, and nobody wants to do either of those things. I get it, but it's in these instances, or in your instance, you know, if you're doing something, you know, in your own time, like let's say you're trying to start a Bible club at your school or your work, or you're trying to, you know, pray and stuff like for other people, you know, it's not always gonna work out, you know. And that's the thing that I really want to just like emphasize, is that, you know, it's not about recognition or like being patted on the back for doing this, you know. It's in a way you got to enjoy how uncomfortable this can be, you know. This walk with God is not easy, and it's never gonna be easy, especially, you know, if you have ties to a world where, you know, everybody wants to pull you away from God, you know. Everyone wants to distract you and take your focus off God, you know. That's the whole agenda of the devil, you know. Even in me doing this, I still get those feelings of like, nah, man, you know, like, you just cussed today, you know, you just got mad at that person. Like, how are you gonna come here and preach what it is you don't practice? That's exactly what you need to do. You know, you need to come and still show up every single time despite how you feel. That's just the cold water, you know. Honestly, a lot of the times, I think a lot of the times lately, I haven't been really wanting to do this. I feel like it's so funny. When I first started this, I had these services in my Bible, and they were just so easy. They felt so easy to just read because, you know, I was kind of applying what it is I was learning at church to the lesson that I was reading. But these lessons were essentially just, you know, given to me. You know, I didn't really like put in the time and the work. But now that I'm doing these lessons on my own, they're they're a lot harder, and they're really showcasing that, like, you know, I still have so much more to learn in terms of the word. You know, I have a lot more to learn, and it's, I imagine, going to take a lot longer, despite all the tests and tribulations that I've gone through. You know, I felt like, man, like, I did that, you know, like, I really, you know, I can do this long term. And then God's like, all right, you know, God really went, and I took that personal. And he showed me, like, it's not as easy as I thought, you know, when the lessons were just essentially being given to me, you know. Now that I'm, you know, having to put in the elbow grease on my own, it's a lot more difficult. But that's where it counts. That's where it really, really matters. When, you know, like when I tell you, I was so close to not doing this lesson because of whatever frigging thing they were doing over there. It genuinely was like upsetting me, like, so much. I was like, run is over, run club is abolished. Like, we're done. Like, you know, it was genuinely like that, you know, like, you genuinely, I mean, that could just be me, you know. I'm a little unhinged sometimes, so I'm not gonna speak for everybody, you know, but that's just how it can feel sometimes. You know, granted, you know, we want to apply what it is God teaches us, you know, and I think that's like the biggest thing. You need to just keep applying and applying and applying these practices until after a while they just come naturally, and they will. I promise you, they will come naturally after a while. I never considered myself someone to be patient or, like, you know, I guess understanding, you know, but it took a long time of practicing that, and I'm a lot better for it now. Obviously, you know, things will still come up, but I think for the most part, God has helped me a lot, you know, with these, you know, problems. I kind of flew off the handle in a good way there. I don't know what happened. I was trying to, like, read my notes just now, and I kind of just went off on a little tangent, you know. I'm hoping that was God speaking through me, because I prayed prior. I'm like, God, please just help me to speak in an orderly fashion at the very least. And I'm hoping that was him. Last note, naturally, we want to be in control of things. I think that's a very natural human thing, you know. We want to be in control, which is why when we go through these things, when we feel these things, we kind of just want to, you know, give up or hide, you know, hide our shame, our guilt, things like that. Sorry, that's another thing that's been getting in my head. There is a quote that I did want to end on. Jesus will get to the heart of the matter of your sin if you let him. I thought that was looking pretty fire while I was reading my lesson this morning. You gotta let him. You gotta really be open, you know. You gotta have a willing heart. You gotta surrender, you know. Just admit, like, you know what, I am a sinner, or I messed up. Really, truly repent, you know, and God will help you. I promise you, God will help you. There is no one that was more against, you know, the idea of religion than me. Okay, obviously, like, that's not true. I'm a bit of a dramatic, but genuinely, I never saw myself like doing this, you know. So at the same time, you know, you want to give yourself some grace. No, I'm just kidding. It'd be so funny if I just crashed out on those birds just now. At the same time, you want to give yourself some grace. So what I mean by that is, you know, grace is such a hard thing, especially in certain cultures. I feel like what I'm talking about is gym culture, you know, like, wow, that drink is strong. what I mean is, like, you know, you don't want to be envious of other people's pursuits with God. You know, you don't want to see them and like be like, oh wow, they're doing all these amazing things. They're in praise team, or you know, they're an usher, or you know, they just have so much more involvement. Don't worry about that. Focus on your own lane with your walk with God. Okay, God calls us to our own unique strengths, and He will make your weaknesses your strengths. So if you just focus on God, you know, focus on the Word, on prayer, it will happen. At the same time, you have to go hand in hand with it, with the leg work. You gotta put some work into it. You know. That's pretty much it. It's funny because I want to start condensing these a little bit shorter. Here we are at 25 minutes in perfect conditions, you know. But I don't know, I like talking about this stuff at the very least. I won't always know what I'm talking about, but I at least got the heart to want to talk about this stuff. So I'm happy about that. I'm happy to see where I am, where I was like a year ago to now, you know, so I'm happy with that. I hope everyone's doing good. I hope, you know, everyone is trying to be at least 1% better every day, whether, you know, I mean, only you know what it is that is affecting you or holding you back from, you know, your walk with God, or just, I guess, being a genuine good person. I don't know. You know, I hope everyone's doing good. That's pretty much it. Gonna get into my run, and until next time, bye.